afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter where you are in this fine land of ours. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. It's going to be a good show, folks. We're talking about social media advertising and promotion. Is it worth it? And it's really a candid conversation. And I've got a pretty cool panel of two individuals, one from the B2C world, one from the B2B world. And we're just going to, break it down and talk about our experiences, our stories, what the stats say. And as you move forth and determine what your plan is in social media, hopefully this little session today helps you out. Whether you're listening to it live or you're listening to it on demand, you'll be able to reach any of our panelists today. We'll give you all that contact information. But let me set the stage, all right? So I'm going to use some information here. Interesting stats here, referenced by Hootsuite not too long ago, but it's all public domain. So let's start with this. On the premise of, is it worth it, all right? Internet advertising surpassed newspaper advertising for the first time. That happened recently. Advertisers spent about $5 billion on social media advertising. That's with a B. That happened in 2013. But by 2018, they expect that to exceed $14 billion. All figures, of course, in U.S. dollars. In the third quarter of 2014, Facebook brought in almost $3 billion in advertising revenue, 66% of which came from mobile ads. Twitter generated 85% of its total revenue from mobile advertising in the exact same quarter. That's about $320 million. So let me ask you this. Are you convinced in the value of social ads? Well, let me carry on. On Facebook, desktop ads have 8 times higher click-through rates, and mobile ads have 9 times higher click-through rates than normal websites. Meanwhile, promoted tweets have shown an average engagement rate of around 1 to 3%, which is a lot higher than traditional banner ads. Nearly 80% of U.S. marketers are using promoted tweets. All right, so that sounds pretty darn impressive. But wait, just wait. The venerable Harvard Business Review, as recently as yesterday, had this to say about social media advertising. Is it worth it? And I'm quoting a little bit here. When it comes to business, we talk too much about social media and expect too little. It's like the old joke about salespeople. One person says, hey, I made some valuable contacts today. And the other responds, I didn't get any orders either. But all right. So companies measure the market results of their sales investments, but few have measures or even have accountable managers in place for their social media investments. Only 7% say their organizations understand the exact value at stake from digital. But according to a Gallup survey, 62% of U.S. adults who use social media say these sites have no influence on their purchasing decisions, and only 5% say that they have a great deal of influence. And they go on a little further here, and then I'll stop. The most common metrics for evaluating social media are likes, tweets, reviews, click-through rates for online ads, not cause and effect links between the medium and the market results. In other words, if they click through, did it result in a sale? The basic investment logic is typically no deeper than, hey, 50 million tweets. Can't be wrong, right? So the truth is, there's justifiable skepticism about this data. There are farming services that will spike these numbers for you with evidence that 1 in 3 online reviews is fake. For $50, you can buy 1,000 likes, 5,000 Twitter followers, or 200 Google plus ones. 8% of internet users account for 85% of clicks on display ads, and 85% of social media updates come from less than 30% of a company's social media audience. A Forrester study found that posts from top brands on Twitter and Facebook reached just 2% of their followers. Now I'm talking followers, not new customers. And you'll love this. Only 0.07% of those followers actually interact with those posts. Since 2008, according to a McKinsey study, companies have devoted more time and money to social networks and 20% less to email communications. Yet the same study found that the humble email remains a more effective way to acquire customers, nearly 40 times more effective, 40 times more effective than Facebook and Twitter combined. Why? Because 90% of a U.S. consumer use email daily, and the average order value is 17% higher than purchases attributed to those social media. There you have it, the pro, the con. So that's today's conversation. Is it worth it? Let me tell you how this show is going to work. We're going to talk about tips and tricks and observations and take your questions all live in the process. You can ask any question you want to, whether you're on a Windows machine, a Mac, a tablet. Simply go in, submit your question there. We'll get it. You're in listen-only mode. This webinar is being recorded. We're going to send you a recording when we get it. We encourage you to share it online, put it on your LinkedIn profile, go on Twitter. Why not use social media since we're talking about social media? We're also following Twitter. So if you want to send your questions, use #VCW Advertising. So that's how you do it. I'm Daryl Prale. I'm your host, but let's talk about the people that are really smarter than me, which is Paige Musto. Paige, did I get that right? Musto? I know I messed it up. Musto.
Sounds great coming out of your voice.
All right. Paige is the Director of Communications at Act-On Software. If you guys don't know Act-On, go check them out. Google them right now. Act-On is like one of the most powerful, amazing marketing automation solutions in the industry. So she knows all about social media advertising, using the medium to gain new market share. They're like a success story. It's crazy. Check them out. But so she's representing B2B. Flipping that around is London Delicate. London is an owner of a School of Rock franchise in San Jose. So there's the B2B side. If you ever watched any of the movies that they're most famous for, of course, which I know are not necessarily producer related to School of Rock, but they're, there's inspiration there. You know fundamentally what School of Rock is all about. It's a cool, innovative, amazing experience about teaching, people young and old on how to come to music and enjoy the instrument and jam in a band and, perform. London, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay. So everybody knows how to submit questions. Everybody knows how to, listen in, and that's the exciting part. We'll get the show going. Here's the question. I'm just going to put it out there. You guys can jump in if you want to, all right? What is social media advertising, and how does it compare and contrast to traditional pay-per-click? And maybe what I'll do even is I'll flip it over to Paige for a second, because definitely the B2B side, I know they have done everything. So Paige, can you help our audience just understand what it is and how it compares?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the introduction, Daryl. So social media advertising, again, it's a lot like what you think of when, Google AdWords has come out, right, with the whole PPC model. It follows that type of kind of workflow as far as the targeting goes, allocating budgets and being charged based on engagement or clicks. With social media advertising, really, you want to look at it really as just an extension of your overall, paid ad program. These are just other channels that allow you to get in front of your targeted prospects and be able to target or hyper-target, actually, down to, title, interest, the location, behaviors. So, it's a great opportunity to really kind of hone in on your target demographic, understand who your buyer is, and try to get in front of them. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different channels. You have LinkedIn, where you can do, sponsored updates and sponsored stories and ads. You have Twitter. Twitter has a plethora of different ad opportunities from website cards to lead gen cards to promote into tweets and things of that nature. And then you have Facebook. Facebook has, boost your posts. Sponsored stories, ads. So, it really is about understanding where your audience is as far as the social channels go, and then really kind of targeting your content campaigns, to them on the channels that that they frequent the most.
Let me jump over to London for a second here. London, as a franchise owner, School of Rock there in San Jose, you got an interesting experience because you're both a franchise owner, so you're accountable, shall we say, for generating your own, revenue, your own students, your own enrollment. But you've also got corporate sponsorship. What's been your experience on the different forms of advertising, of what's worked for you, what's not? Maybe just share us some of your lessons learned, your mistakes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you bet. We're a new business. We opened about 16 months ago. So for us, a big part of what we've been focusing on this last year is just getting the word out and letting people know that we're here. So we did a combination. of a variety of the channels that Paige mentioned, as well as some traditional channels. And I say that one of the big differences in just thinking about social is, we did direct mail pieces, we did print pieces, we did flyers. We've got our Facebook channel, now we've got our Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus, YouTube channels. I think the big difference, one of the big differences for us with social is you get the immediate feedback and you get the immediate effectiveness because you get so much analytics with everything right away that you can kind of see what the results are. Versus traditional channels, you're just kind of throwing it out there and hoping something sticks. And to your question about franchising, we have an interesting hybrid between what they do at an international sort of, meta brand level is they really focus on kind of School of Rock as a brand, the Google search results, and doing everything that we can do to improve both organic and paid results. And then we do things at the local level that help supplement that. So by adding really hyper-local San Jose, thing about our school, rich organic content that helps. They're sort of symbiotic. They're doing things, kind of top down, and we're doing things bottom up.
So London kind of made some interesting comments there. One of the things she alluded to was that you can see the results on the social side, and that's referred to as social proof. In other words, if you pay for a post to be sponsored on your favorite social media platform, you actually have the ability to say how many people physically liked your post. You can see the results immediately. Social proof. You could even see who liked it, so you can pursue them if you want to. So that's one of the powerful things with the social media advertising, that you don't have the same success rate that you might have, say, on a pay-per-click, which is a little more anonymous, right? Somebody clicked on your ad, you incurred the cost, but maybe they got taken to a landing page, didn't fill out the form. What do I learn from this, right? So that's the pros and cons. The big difference, if you're still not clear on this, pay-per-click is what you might see. We'll use Google as an example of a search engine where you have the ads down the side, right? And you're literally paying per click. And unless they complete your form, they're relatively anonymous. You have some ability to segment, based on geography, etc., but it's fairly limited. All right, it's difficult to say I want a pay-per-click ad that's focused on girls between the ages of 10 and 14, because people surf anonymously. Whereas in social media, the ability to do similar advertising, comparing apples to apples, banner advertising, display ads to banner advertising in Google display ads, you can be that granular. You can talk about demographics, gender, age, locations, that kind of stuff. So when I hear you, London, talk about hyper, focus on the San Jose area, that's a powerful differentiator where social media might be a lot more tangible for you. For example, if you want to run a kids program specific to a certain age bracket, social media is probably a much better fit for you than, say, pay-per-click. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely right. And depending on who our audience is, we might choose to focus on a different channel. So, for example, if we are right now, we're advertising our summer camps, and so what we do is really hone in on those demographics in our San Jose and adjoining city area. Parents, this income bracket, from ages 35 to 55, within a 15-minute drive of the school, who have shown that on Facebook they have interest in guitar lessons or piano lessons or vocal lessons. And then the other thing we might do is we're also speaking to kids at the same time. So we might choose a channel like Instagram that's much more popular with sort of our teenage crowd and make a post and communicate directly to them for them to kind of then go and influence their parents. So just depending on who we're trying to target, we might choose a different channel as well.
And that's brilliant. And one of the things that's cool about Twitter, for example, if I'm London and maybe there's a competing music school in the neighborhood, I can actually go and do some advertising on Twitter, and I can say I want to target people who have liked their posts, like their brand. So that's pretty powerful stuff. Now let me change the slide here and go on to the next conversation. I'm going to bring it back to Paige for a second. So the question is this, all right? So if I understand the difference now between pay-per-click and social media, and each serves a purpose. Today's webinar is not to discourage you from pursuing a pay-per-click. In fact, it's not that at all. It is simply to compare and contrast and talk about, social media, because it's a little newer, say, than pay-per-click. Is it worth it? Because it's a different value prop, different price point. The question we get asked a lot is, what social media platforms are applicable for my audience? And London touched a bit about that just now from the School of Rock. But Paige, I want to bring it back to you because as Acton, I'm assuming you have a good understanding of who your typical buyers, the size of the organization, maybe the job title, et cetera, et cetera. Have you done any experimenting? Do you have any anecdotal feedback and observations about which mediums work better for you to get in front of your target audience?
Yeah, actually, we obviously, when you create, I guess, a market automation strategy at a company, the first thing you really want to do is to build out a buyer persona, identify what those 2 to 3 key core customers are that typically buy your platform. And for us, obviously, we'll target from the CMO to a marketing director to a marketing manager, and maybe even down to the coordinator on a more tactical level. So, for us, using a platform like LinkedIn, where you can actually, target based on a professional audience. And I can look at, seniority. I can look at company size. I can look at specific titles. So when we use LinkedIn, we actually see a healthier, what we call click-to-lead ratio. Typically, our click-to-lead ratio on LinkedIn, we'll get about 5 clicks will equal 1 lead. And we can track that by, having our system synced to our marketing automation platform. So LinkedIn will tell us how many clicks and what, our total budget is for that campaign that we've spent to date. But I can go into a marketing automation system like Acton to find out, okay, of those clicks, how many actually converted for us into a lead. So when I take a more granular approach and I'm looking at leads over engagement, like a favorite or a share, a 5-to-1 is quite healthy for us. Whereas on Twitter, lots of volume, lots of activity. We see, retweets, shares, favorites. But as far as the click-to-lead ratio, it's not as healthy for us, at least on Twitter. We see about a 40-to-3. So for every 40 clicks that we get on a campaign, about 3 of them will end up converting into a lead, which means they've completed the call to action, which was either download an ebook, register for the webinar, or register for some sort of event. So for us, knowing that we obviously focus on B2B and have specific titles and company sizes that we target, LinkedIn is the best platform for us as far as conversions go.
How long did it take you, Paige, to kind of figure that out? Because I know for a lot of people, they don't have huge budgets, so they dabble, right? And it's hard to commit to a sustained 6-month, 12-month program to really figure it all out. How long did it take you folks to figure it out?
I'd say, again, we're a very lean company. I'm not, working off $100,000s of dollars for, social campaign budgets. Whereas, I know some of our competitors or other companies in the space that have a little more, green bucks behind them. They're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars a quarter on their social campaigns. When we first started out, I've been with Acton now for about 3 years. I've helped to develop their social program here. We were actually looking at just $5,000 across all channels per month. And, you can actually really understand performance and, how well a platform is converting for you, within 30 days. You obviously have different types of content or campaigns that you are trying to promote. So, obviously you want to start off by, maybe sharing a variety of, maybe it's one ebook, maybe it's a webinar, and maybe one is an event. And you put, say, $100 behind each of those campaigns on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And then you can identify what it is that those audience, like what type of content or campaigns work, right? For instance, Facebook does very well for us for webinars or, events. Ebooks and white papers don't perform as well as we like on Facebook. So we now understand the consumption model of the network in Facebook, what they're looking for, right? LinkedIn, obviously, the ebooks and the white papers and the kind of the industry survey reports do very well on there. And, you can understand this within 30 days, right? Because you can go back into the system, understand the clicks and engagement, and then try to, go into your marketing automation system or make sure you have unique tracking codes that let you know that, of the leads that have been submitted for this specific campaign, that they're attributed to social media. So, you can have a small budget, and understand, what it is that, the networks want to consume, and what's working and what's not working. And, being able to do that, you can pull funds out of a specific campaign that's not working as well, where you have maybe hundreds of clicks with zero conversion. So I'm going to take my money out of there and I want to put it back into this campaign, for this toolkit where, maybe we had 50 clicks, but we had 5, conversions. So, you do want to be able to assess your campaigns and monitor them on, a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis to know what's working and what's pulling, and then, reallocate your budget according to that.
So there's a lot. There's a lot on what you just said. So let me focus on a couple of things. What I'm intrigued by is the fact that you've got a variety of tactics: webinars, ebooks, white papers, case studies, etc. And you've been able to discern in a fairly fast time frame that certain mediums, Twitter versus LinkedIn versus Facebook, which is of course what we're focusing on mostly today, folks. Even though we do know there's Instagram and Pinterest and StumbleUpon and everything else. Perform better. Some perform better on one platform versus another. And that's brilliant because I think a lot of people, that's where they get frustrated. They're like, it's not working. But maybe it's just they were using the wrong call to action or the wrong fulfillment piece for that particular medium and audience. That's huge. So that's a huge takeaway. Another thing that's huge, it's implied here, but a lot of people mess this up. In the B2B concept, it's about having content that's actually worthwhile consuming. And if you don't have that worthwhile consumable content, I would posit that a lot of your social media advertising spend will be a complete and utter bust. So let me ask you that, Paige, what's the balance between, if you're going to make an investment, between good content versus the advertising side?
Well, again, we say that content is king, right? And context or relevance is queen. So at the end of the day, you need to make sure you have the content. The content needs to make sure it's educating, it's enabling your audience. If you don't have that, then the campaigns or your social ads, it's not worth it because you're just going to get lots of clicks, but nobody's actually converting because the message is off or it's not meeting the needs of what that buyer, is looking to have addressed. So I would focus first on content. Get a couple good pieces of content, an ebook, a white paper, some sort of survey. Have a couple assets that you can start off with, and then put them onto these social ad platforms and see how they pool. And monitor those. Monitor them day to day. Understand, because the problem is, with Twitter. For instance, the Twitter reps are going to tell you, put more money in. There's tons of engagement, right? Well, what's important to a marketer at the end of the day? It's leads, right? We like likes, but leads are going to be better. So Twitter is going to tell you keep putting money in. Look, you have tons of clicks. You have 25 shares. The X number of favorites. Well, those are great, but in order to understand how content really is working and if it's converting and if the message is correct. That you need to understand how many people are completing that call to action, putting their information in that form field and downloading that asset. To me, that lets you know whether your content is resonating and it's right for your audience. So, but start small. Don't be overwhelmed. You don't need to have 15 campaigns running at one time. If you have an ebook and you have a webinar coming up, try it with that. Put a couple $100 behind each of those campaigns. Set your click at a minimum of $10 per click. Typically, it'll be lower than that, but $10 will make sure that your ad at least renders for a majority of the audience, the target audience.
So we promised you candid, anecdotal opinions and observations. You're hearing it here. This is awesome. Let me come back to you, London. So I heard Paige say a variety of things, but it's going to compare and contrast because she's B2B and you're B2C. Paige made a comment that, they started with as little as $5,000 a month. And I would suspect for a franchisee who's just starting, and you're less than 2 years old, $5,000 a month may be more than you're willing to put out there on a social media ad spend. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what Paige said is absolutely accurate. You might be talking about increments of tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars, but the flexibility of being able to see in real time after you input all of your demographic information to say, well, if I spend, $100 towards this effort, how many people does it estimate that this is going to reach? And that's really effective. And you can slide it up and slide it down and figure, okay, what am I going to risk? And then if, a few days go by and it's not working, you can pull the plug. And like Paige said, apply it towards something else. But, one of the things that I was thinking about was, in addition to understanding your audience, is understanding your intent. Consumers and everyone is very savvy today. Everyone knows when they're being sold and when they're just getting hammered with a sales message. And I think what we try to take is a very holistic view and understand, well, what are we trying to communicate? And so, for us, it's driving awareness. We may have an event or something that we want to, drive people towards. We may have a call to action that's around selling something or, driving, a specific promotional event. But sometimes we also just want to celebrate our customers and engage with our customers. We're in a business with kids. Like, people want to see their kids. They want to look at videos of their kids, and they want to look at photos of their kids. And we want to drive goodwill and good word of mouth. So I think that, as we look across all of these platforms, and whenever we post anything, the first question we ask is, well, why? And what do we hope to get out of it? And sometimes it's not, a direct sale or a direct lead. It's because we want to celebrate our business and celebrate our customers.
I love that because it really says, intent not only is critical for having a cohesive and, logical plan, but it also is equally critical for managing expectations, right? If it's simply to celebrate and say, hey, this is a YouTube video of one of our students who is a guitar monster. Check out them riffing on this, classic song. How do you not feel great about that individual and the school for sponsoring? And I may not be looking for music lessons right now, but maybe a year from now I am, and you're top of mind. So therefore, if you don't get a lot of traction on that spend, that's okay. That wasn't the intent. The intent was simply to grow my brand and my awareness. Love that. All right, so let's kind of recap here. The question, of course, is what social media platforms are applicable for my audience? You've heard some great anecdotal stories from the B2C world as well as the B2B world. So let's recap. Twitter's basically a social ad platform that allows you to target your ads to specific groups of people, and they all do. Like most platforms, Twitter lets you target based on location or gender or languages or interests and device. You can also, which is kind of cool, you can upload specific lists of people, like your email list, for example, to target with ads. But Twitter targeting is especially valuable if you're looking to target people based on their networks, all right? So basically, if you have a coffee shop in Vancouver, we talked about this kind of earlier, the strength of Twitter ads is that you can target audiences that are already following their rival coffee shops in that city. You can also target people who are similar to your follower base, and that's a great way to find your target audience. So that's Twitter. Like Twitter, on Facebook, you can target audiences, again, based on location, language, age, and other common demographics. But for many people, Facebook is far more valuable when it comes to targeting people by interests. And there were some references by that when Paige said, webinars work better because they're appealing maybe to a topic that's of interest to them. Facebook lets you choose from a remarkably large list of interests. So you can target, for example, people who love aviation or people who love snack foods, or maybe people who sell snack foods on planes, who knows. Additionally, Facebook lets you target people based on behaviors, right? So like their purchasing behavior and their charitable donations. So that kind of gives you a real opportunity to find the audience that matches your ideal prospect. Finally, let's talk about LinkedIn again. LinkedIn targeting, not unlike the other social network itself, is very, very good for employee and company-specific targeting. So you can specify who you want to see the ad based on the industry they work in. So already this is definitely sounding more B2B, right? Their position, their seniority, you get a white paper, Paige mentioned that. So a white paper may not want to be consumed by somebody at a certain level in the organization. Maybe it's a white paper on an economic buying decision and rationale. So that's more of an executive type thing versus how do I do this? Maybe more of a mid-level management type position. All right. You can target where they work, how big their employer is, so company size, right? So as a result, LinkedIn is pretty much, it's extremely effective for the B2B marketing and, of course, the obvious one, job-related advertising. So that's kind of the platforms. Let's go on to how does the advertising work? So Paige, let me bring it back to you. Everyone's got different kinds of content. There's sponsored posts, sponsored updates. There's display ads? Like, is there certain kinds of content types? I'm sorry, yeah, advertising types that you are biased towards?
Yeah, you could say that. As it
Or not.
relates to, I guess it can be specific to channels. For instance, on Twitter, I guess maybe I should take a step back. It really depends on what your objective is, right? I mean, are you trying to grow your community of followers? Are you trying to increase engagement and spur conversations? Or are you trying to drive traffic to your website or to a landing page where you have a call to action, right? So on Twitter, you have many different options, as far as targeting goes, but as objectives are as well, right? So if you want to create, conversations and spur, engagement, then you want to look at doing what they call tweet engagement. So you can reach more people and obviously drive conversations. These would be, obviously adding to your retweets, your favorites, and the replies from your campaigns. And again, these campaigns may be more thought-provoking point of views, thought leadership pieces than they are obviously, trying to get somebody to download an ebook or attend a webinar. If you're trying to do the latter, you may want to look at doing what we call like website clicks or conversions. So you could do website cards or lead gen cards. And typically those are, 100-word, post with a visual, that relates back to obviously like what you're trying to convey, and allows them to just click on the image and it will drive them back to the website or the landing page. Or the lead gen card option, more on the consumer side of the house, because Twitter obviously has an email address for every profile that has an account. So it allows you to create a call to action within that tweet, within an actual image, and they just say, sign me up. And once they press the sign me up, that email address automatically gets put into the list, and now you have them their information captured. Or if you want to grow your community, you're new, you want to get in front of the prospects, the target audience, some of the influencers. It's a great way to try to promote your company in the corporate side of the house to gain more followers. And then on LinkedIn, specific to LinkedIn, it depends, right? All these channels offer what we call self-service ads, right? So if you don't have big budgets, you're going to be doing self-service, which means you're going to be creating your own campaigns. You're not going to have some sort of expert or somebody that's kind of helping you augment or optimize each of your posts or your campaigns. So on LinkedIn, with that, your only really options are to do LinkedIn, what they call LinkedIn ads, which only render on desktop. So keep in mind, over 60 to 70% of folks are actually logging into LinkedIn through their mobile device. So you have a limited audience that's going to read that or be able to actually view it, I guess I should say. And then you also have what they call sponsored stories. So these would be posts that you place on your corporate business profile, and then in the back end you can say, I basically want to boost this post, get more people to read it. It falls within the stream and can be read through a mobile device. So typically what we do is we're self-service right now, so we do a combination. We'll take a campaign and we'll run it as LinkedIn ad in addition to a sponsored story. So we have both of them kind of going at the same time, hoping to capture a wider net. On Facebook, we typically do a follower or like campaign to kind of increase the community or the network. And then we also run targeted ads that render across all mobile devices that focus really on interest and demographics. Because again, we know who our buyer is, so we can target that way. So for us, we typically run, we leverage a few of the different campaign objectives per channel. And, it's good just to kind of keep a steady momentum. You don't have to put a lot of budget in there, but it at least, it keeps some momentum going, gets your profile in front of your target audience, and hopefully creates engagement and spurs some conversations.
If I had to kind of wrap it up in a nutshell, because what I love about what Paige is talking about is there's a phenomenal level of granularity you can get into, like from you talk about engagement to page likes to all different kinds of views. We haven't even talked about if you're an application developer, you encourage advertising for app installs. There's still display advertising. There's kind of like almost consistently across all the platforms. I'm totally generalizing here, folks. Is you can either promote a tweet or a post, so to speak. You're a sponsor. They all use their own different language. You can promote an account. You can promote an update. You can promote your content or the story, or you can do display ads. Almost universally across all the platforms. And Paige has been incredibly articulate explaining how the mix and the match works and how they can actually work together, which is kind of like social media advertising 2.0 instead of 1.0, because you kind of get your feet underneath you, and then you can start being more progressive and doing that, which is the advice that both London and Paige have given us. Kind of take your time slow, spend a little money, figure it out, what works. London, have you played with the different kinds of ad types you can do on the various platforms, and have you found for the B2C world that you live in that certain types perform better than other for you?
Yeah, we focus so far. We've really focused on Facebook as far as paid engagement. Everything else has been just sort of more organic. I think as we grow and mature, we're going to start to reach out and expand more, deeply into the paid aspects of the other platforms. But for us, within Facebook, what we found is that we get a much higher response rate when it is more organic. When things just pop up in people's news feed. So when we just boost a post, so that it will show up in more people's just news feed than it normally would, just based on people who already have liked our page. We get customers that come in and say, "Oh, you just showed up in my news feed. I don't know why." Versus when we've done things that are clearly more targeted, sort of ads that are hanging to the right side of the page. For us, for whatever reason, I don't know if that's going to change over time as people get a little bit more savvy and understand how they're being marketed to within Facebook. But for us, it just feels probably a little bit more homegrown and like, oh, look at this cool thing that's happening in San Jose.
That's awesome. Paige, may I bring it back to you. Is there anything you're dabbling with now that's kind of new variations, or at this point in time, your formula is established?
These self-service ads or the ad backends of the ad platforms for the social channels, they're constantly kind of innovating and thinking about what's next. What are other ways that we can, work with the vendors to get them to, promote or to drive more traffic to the website. So for instance, like Twitter, they just created, you can promote videos, right? So there's video ad promotion. So we're looking into that. And that also goes across on Facebook as well. So we are creating a lot of multimedia assets, and so I think we're going to start dabbling in some video ads, and we use a platform right now called Vidyard, which actually allows us to put calls to actions or forms within the video itself. So there'll still be an element of lead generation with these. In addition to, kind of just spreading awareness and trying to increase engagement and viewership. So I think for us, next step is looking at how we can include multimedia as it relates to video into some of our social advertising.
If anybody's interested, I'll give Paige a little plug here. If you go to the Acton website, they have got a ton of free resources there for your social media for lead generation, 10 things marketers should be doing on Twitter, 10 tips for creating engaging content, 10 ways to integrate social media across marketing channels. It goes on. That's just a few. So you have permission to multitask and Google that and find that where we're talking up a storm here. So there we go. All right. So that's how the advertising works. And again, just the format of the webinar, we're just touching it here. You're encouraged to reach out to us directly, and we can drill down on there afterwards for you. We'd love to have that conversation. We'll give you that information shortly. So give it to us straight. What works? What doesn't? How much should I budget? What should I expect? We've kind of covered this a little bit, but let me ask, let me go to London in this one. London, if there is another B2C organization that's early on, kind of like you, or they're reinventing themselves, what advice would you give them?
I would say that, kind of what we touched on before, I would say figure out what it is that you want to accomplish. Do a little bit of research on who are the users of each of these platforms and target your probably limited human and financial resources on those platforms. So, really, if you're focused on just driving awareness and building your audience, I think that whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, just really trying to know what it is that you're trying to do and just hone in on a few platforms at first, and then you can grow over time.
Paige, how about you? Kind of a B2B company dabbling for the first time into this. You've already talked about go slow. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You talked about content. I'm recapping all the wisdom you've already shared with them. Is there any other pieces of advice you can say? Listen, if I was in your shoes, starting out, this is what we found, what worked for us, and what doesn't, and what I would suggest where you start your focus on.
Yeah, I mean, from a B2B standpoint, I would really focus on LinkedIn. If you have, a minimal budget, I would try to put a lot of it into a LinkedIn campaign. And I would do a variety, again, of the sponsored stories in addition to some of the display ad options. Again, though they only render for folks that are accessing LinkedIn from a desktop. Hopefully that will change over time, and it will also render for folks on their mobile devices. But with sponsored stories, they do render, and they fall within the stream of an individual. So it looks more, again, kind of natural and organic. And then, it's also an opportunity for you to get folks to follow your business page, so to expand that community. So there's kind of two objectives with the sponsored stories. You can drive them to your website or to a landing page, but there's also a plus sign right next to each one of those sponsored stories, which allow them to automatically follow your business page. So anything that you guys issue from there will then feed into their stream. So there's dual benefit there. Twitter, again, from a B2B standpoint, we have, majority of our customers, the influencers in the space, the analysts, the bloggers, the press, they're all on Twitter, and they're using it every day, all the time to, have conversations, to learn about, what's happening in the world or with technology. So it's also a great place, to promote and to try to increase engagement. It's not so great for lead generation, but it's great if you want to kind of get out and get known. You want to get in front of, these influencers and the folks that are kind of the movers and shakers within the industry. So building community, fostering engagement, Twitter is great. But if you really are trying to generate leads and close business, I'd look at LinkedIn. And Facebook is great if you're trying to get folks to attend an event or a webinar, things of that nature. So each platform has its own benefits and minuses. So again, it's just going to take a little bit of time for you to understand where your target demographic is, and to adjust your budget according to whatever it is that you're measuring on. If you're measuring it on engagement or you're measuring it on number of leads.
If you look at the raw results, I mean, some of this stuff is just pretty straightforward, but it's worth mentioning again, right? So Facebook has over 1 billion registered users, all right? So they have a third of all internet users worldwide. They have over 700 million daily active users. That's a pretty big audience. So you can see how the B2C world, for especially, would resonate well with that. With someone, you have an interest, again, to Paige's point and London's point about human interest stuff, personal, resonates well with that. But the stats vary, right? So you can find stats all over the place, but here are some of the stats, and if you want the references, I'll give them to you. But basically, average click-through rates on Facebook ads for an external website, 0.04%, an event RSP, 0.02%, inline likes, 0.03%. Those are pretty small. But then I look at the opposite side, and I know Paige talked about this. Sponsored page post action stories, over 2%. Page post like stories over 2%, almost 2.5. Check-in stories over 3%. So that's pretty cool. Twitter, they have over 300 million users. So again, not as much as Facebook, but again, different audience, and that's not an insignificant number. What you'd see with Twitter, would you benefit from it? Well, 53% of businesses in the information and communication verticals, those industries, reported the highest rate of blog and microblog or Twitter usage, right? So if you're in that industry, so is our audience. 85% of B2B marketers use Twitter, and 50% see it as an effective channel. LinkedIn, not unlike Twitter, 300 million active monthly users. So, that's pretty good as well. If I look at some of the stats for Twitter, 65% of B2B companies have acquired a customer through LinkedIn. 91% of B2B marketers use LinkedIn, and 40% of B2B buyers stated that researching prospective vendors on LinkedIn was important. And that goes to something we haven't even talked about here, which is the whole buyer's journey. We've talked about advertising. We've talked about content being king. But the buyer's journey is understanding how do they go about buying your product or service. And part of that journey is not just word of mouth referrals or Google search results where a pay-per-click might work, but it's also, other sources of endorsements. So they may have a Twitter, community that they hang out with, or a LinkedIn group that they hang out with. So when they're seeing your ads on there, you're going where they're going, and that's pretty cool. Twitter claims that promoted trends. The promoted trends one is interesting. Okay, so we haven't even talked about that one because it's a whole different stratospheric price point. That's the idea of that. If something's trending, like maybe there's a latest scandal on Hollywood and it's trending on Twitter, you can have your brand associated with that. And that'll give you a 22% lift in your brand conversion, 30% lift in positive mentions, 32% lift in retweets. That sounds awesome, doesn't it? Yeah, well, it can cost you more than $200,000 a day. So if you got the cash, that's the place to go. So those are some of the facts, giving it to you straight. We've talked about lessons learned, wisdom earned. So I'm going to give each of you one more chance to give one final statement. London, what's one mistake you wish you wouldn't have made? What's one thing you wish you would have done sooner?
I wish I wouldn't have pursued traditional advertising channels, and I wish I would have put all of my eggs in social.
Wow.
And that's not hyperbole. As a small business starting up with limited funds, what I realized after we really started pursuing social in earnest was how much more effective and how much more traction we could have gotten early on had we focused on building up our social channels sooner. And as we look ahead, as I'm going into year 2 of my business, what we've got back in front of us are what are the next channels that we're going to add. We're excited to dive into LinkedIn for some corporate team building things that we've got. We're going to move into Pinterest to talk directly to the moms with all of the cool visual stuff that we have. We're going to start using local meetup groups to branch out into our musician community. So for us, it's just we're going to be adding blogs and talking about the cool stuff that we do and the things that a music education can bring. So the one thing that I would like to go back in time would be to accelerate our presence in all of these social media channels because it works.
So clearly you're not on the side of the Harvard Business Review. That's awesome. All right, Paige. One mistake you wish you wouldn't have made, and one thing you wish you would have done, much, much sooner.
Let's start off with what you want to do much, much sooner first. That really goes back to being strategic, having a plan. It can be a skeleton framework, but understand, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? Don't just try to do a batch and blast approach, just like share whatever it is and not really understand, what the objective is, or how you're going to measure success. So I would really, put together a plan, identify what your goal is, and then, put together what those deliverables or tactics are, and how you're going to measure what success is for you. Is success engagement or success leads, right? So, don't go into it blind. Really be strategic about your approach. And let's see, as far as what we would have done sooner, I think would focus around campaign execution. When you're creating a campaign and you push it out, don't just assume, things are going great or, it's performing. You want to go back, whether it's daily, every 2 days, weekly, and you want to really see how things are performing. So you may have set a budget and you're just noticing that there's tons of clicks and volume, but there's no conversion happening. So be very vigilant. Constantly monitor the back end of the system to understand how your social posts or social ads are performing. And if possible, if you have a marketing automation system, make sure that these two systems talk so that you're capturing the leads within your marketing automation system to really understand of the number of clicks that you're getting on these ads, which ones have actually converted, what's working for you.
So there you have it, folks. Lessons learned, wisdom earned. My name is Daryl Praill. I have been joined by Paige Musto and London Delica. You can see their contact information there. Quickly write it down if you haven't. Please definitely check out their sites. School of Rock. Do I need to say more? It's just that cool. Acton. If you want to check out all the marketing automation capabilities that are available to you, these guys are a class act. Full disclosure, we use them. We like them. And myself with Virtual Causeway. So as promised, you're going to get a copy of this in a handful of days. You can listen to it on demand and hear those key points again. We encourage you to share that on social media. Heck, why don't you use that as a call to action and advertise against it? We wouldn't mind. We're done here, folks. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun. Paige, thanks for taking time out of your schedule. Really appreciate it.
Oh, always. It's great.
London, rock on. You did an awesome job. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you again next month, folks. Look for our next webinar and our ongoing webinar series. You'll hear from us soon. Until that time, be safe. Take care. Bye-bye.